popped this little live up. So, hi Kim. Yes, good. I see comments. Okay, thank you for showing up. I know I just kind of popped it on 30 minutes before I was planning on going live, but I've been taking kind of a slow morning this morning. I don't know how you guys feel about this cold, but for me, when it's really cold, I just like to stay cuddled up in my favorite sweatshirts or my favorite blankets a little longer. So it's put me behind schedule today. So I'm wearing my favorite sweatshirt because it's super soft. And that kind of brings me into, some of what we're going to talk about in this little video, right? So when we recognize, hey Ricky, when we recognize things like the softness of our favorite sweatshirt or our favorite blanket, especially when it's cold, or, we love the feeling of the soft, fuzzy socks, right? It's because we're slowing down and recognizing the feeling sensations. And that is really what, somatics helps us to do. It helps us to slow down. It helps us to come back to our feeling sensations. And when we are in that space, we are more dropped into our heart space, right? So why maybe would we want to do that? Like why would we want to be more in our heart space? Well, simply put, when we are living from our heart, we are living more embodied, more fully, we are more engaged, we are really in tune with how we're feeling about life. And it's that feeling, the sensations, the actual living that's important, because a lot of times when we deal with trauma, um, difficult times, challenges, right, we get very in our heads. We're overthinking, we're overanalyzing, we are living through our mind and not really living, you know, in our space, right? And so when we are living from the place of our mind, we aren't fully embodying ourselves in our existence, right? We are just stuck in our heads, and we're missing out on a huge part of, what we're here to be experiencing. So when we slow down to drop into the heart space, it allows us to be more fully embodied. And in that process, right, then we begin to slow down. We become more aware of our actual feelings and the sensations that are happening within the body. And that's really the huge part of somatic therapy, is recognizing those inner sensations and learning to trust again the wisdom of the body and the way that those sensations that you have internally begin to share information about the world around you. And it's building that trust back up with yourself, with your physical body, with the way that your body is working within the world to feed you this information. Because a lot of times trauma makes us not trust ourselves, right? How many times have we blamed ourselves for being at a place at a certain time, or getting involved in a certain situation, or choosing a certain partner, right? And we might blame ourselves and then do the healing work and recognize that it's not our fault, how the other person might have been in that situation. But there's still that part of us that picks up this energy of like distrusting our intuition, distrusting what our body is guiding us towards, right? Or the choices that we make. And this distrust begins to separate us from our feeling sensations inside. So somatics helps to rebuild that trust. It helps you to come back into recognizing the sensations, which actually helps you to navigate when you're in difficult situations. So one of the things that it also does is, in the process of dropping into the heart, in the process of softening, right, we begin to become aware of the armor that we have. We begin to become aware of why we're doing the things that we're doing, and kind of starting to unravel those patterns. And once that comes into awareness, then we get to start kind of, picking apart, like, oh, I can understand and see why I am reacting this way to this situation, because it reminds me of this situation I had over here. And now that I'm recognizing this connection, I can see why I am reacting in this way and what I am holding in my body. And maybe what I'm holding in my body is this stress, this tension, this inner knotting up because I'm expecting the turnout to be the same thing because my lived experience has taught me this. But that is not the experience that I'm currently in. So, how can I talk to my body and be at peace within my body so that I'm not experiencing a rehashing of a past experience, but more fully present in the moment, right here, right now? And this is where we really start to understand what it means to be fully embodied in living our life, because in that moment is the power of recognizing your choice in how you're feeling, your choice in how you're processing things, and really aware of the feeling sensations that you're having in the body. And that is often the missing piece that we tend to experience when we have lived with trauma and when we have become so disconnected, right? And so it really helps us to become more aware and unravel those processes. And once we recognize the coping patterns that we have, then we can start, kind of working through them and understanding, like, is it necessary in this moment to feel this way, right? Sometimes anxiety is completely normal. If you're having to get up in front of a group of people to give a public talk, then it might be normal to feel some anxiety. But if you're feeling anxiety about going to work, which is something that you do regularly, that might begin to raise a question of, okay, where is this anxiety coming from and why is it here? Why is my system being alerted to be anxious when I know that I am doing something that I regularly do? And sitting with that and uncovering, unraveling, discovering why. And it comes back to the patterns of the why and understanding why we do the things we do. So, in the softening, this has been a journey for me personally, I know, for quite a while, coming into the energy of softening. Because when you have lived through traumatic experiences, it's really easy to armor yourself up to become a little hardened, and that you are able to separate yourself more easily. And so even though you can feel, take in, understand, know, you can do all the mental processes of it, the disconnect of the feeling sensations that you have inside is pretty common when it comes to surviving trauma, dealing with trauma, right? So coming back into the softening really allows you that deeper connection with self, so that you're able to sink into the feelings. And it's through this inner navigation that you really begin to learn more. So we can be in our heads about it and think and unravel and do all the things, rewrite our inner stories and that sort of thing. But when we come into the feeling, the body aspect of it, of feeling into the body, feeling into the sensations that are arising from within, then we get to more of the root issues that we are hanging on to, that is still in our energy, that's still being stored in the body, that's still being stored in the muscles and the tissues, and being held onto and helping to create those looped patterns. So this is where we begin to see when someone has, for example, experienced a physical trauma from like a car accident, right? We can understand why someone could hold on to, maybe the imagery, the emotions that were caused from the accident, right? But we tend to forget that the body holds on to that as well. And so when we relive that in the mind and we pull up those emotions, those feelings as we retell the story, our body is also feeling like, oh yeah, I remember that. And it starts to remember the pain. It starts to remember the holding pattern of that. And it begins to then create that pain all over again. And it creates that pain cycle. And so until we actually approach the body with the connection of understanding how it relates to the mind, we tend to hold those patterns and we don't find the healing that we're necessarily looking for. Even if we're seeking out physical therapy or, more of a clinical style massage therapy to release the pain, because what's happening is there's still a disconnect in the thought pattern associated with the physical pain that's still happening. This was something that I learned very early on in my career. I'd say probably, I don't know, within the first 3 years or so of my massage career, I started noticing when I was specializing and working with people that were looking for more of the therapeutic aspect of massage, and working with people that had been in car accidents a lot, what I was noticing is the ones that were holding on to the trauma of the incident because it was such a life-changing experience for them and created such upheaval and trauma in their life, that they weren't experiencing the same feeling as others that didn't have that emotional attachment to it. They weren't retelling the story and becoming overly emotional. They were able to easily just talk about it and let it go, versus the people that were hanging on to it. Those people that hung on to it, I started realizing if I didn't include energy work, there was nothing else supporting that mind-body connection. And that was when I started combining massage and Reiki together for these people that were experiencing that emotional connection. Because to me, being able to work with energy helped to connect to that emotional body layer. And that was where I began my journey of bridging, massage and energy work together in order to create a session that not only addressed the physical body, but also addressed the emotional body as well, to try to bring balance and harmony to the whole holistic view of the person. And so that's when I started noticing that that made a significant difference, that by working through that layer and really helping the person to understand that connection too through the practice that we were doing together was making much larger significant differences in their sessions versus just doing body work alone. So this was really the beginning of my journey in understanding this. And then now having somatic therapy being such a prominent part of what I'm doing, it really helps me to better understand why all of that was working. And now I get to bring it forward in a way that is also helping you to understand how your body is working, how this mind-body connection works. And it's not just the mind-body, but it's also the body to the mind, right? And that's an important part of this too that we tend to forget. We can easily connect to the understanding of, when our mind is busy, when our mind is stressed out and we're in our heads, because as a society, we live in our heads so much. It's easy for us to recognize that when we're in that space, like, we know that it tenses our body. We know that our shoulders get tight and we tend to feel that contracted energy, right? And we know, and then we recognize, our thought processes typically that are contributing to that. When we're under stressed, when we are overwhelmed, when we are just, feel like we're taking all these hits happening, right? And we get that stress and tension going in our minds and we're just constant. We feel that contraction happening in our muscles. We notice, we feel the aches and pains. Eventually, we start feeling the aches and pains of the body. It starts to bring us back into the body, right? But there's also another connection, and that is from the body to the mind. And that is where our posture, the way we're carrying ourselves, the way we're holding ourselves, influences our thoughts and the ways our mind is kind of flowing within itself. And that's a connection that I think a lot of people miss out on. So if you think about maybe feeling a little of that depressive energy, right? You're just kind of feeling down and out, a little more sad or gloomy. Perhaps if you're like me and you don't like this cold weather, you're not getting outside as much because you just don't like the cold, and it makes you feel a little down because there's so much outside you would like to do, especially when it's a beautiful sun shining day. It's just freezing, right? So it makes you feel a little down and depressive. And what does that do? It makes you kind of want to curl up, right? So that curling up is a typical posture for depression. You curl inward, you concave inward, you begin protecting yourself because that's what your body instinctively feels like you need to do. So the opposite posture of being open and rolling the shoulders down and back, of being mindful of your spine and opening through the heart and allowing the heart to take up its space by making sure that the shoulders are down, by opening up through the chest, it begins to shift the way you're feeling internally, right? Your posture does influence your mood. So if in those moments you're feeling that energy and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna take my time and stretch, even though I'm inside and I'm not getting to do the things I want to do outside, and this weather makes me feel icky. I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna open up this heart space. I'm gonna allow myself to breathe into my heart and to really just expand myself, open myself up, because I feel like I just want to contract, and I feel like if I do the opposite, maybe it'll help. And guess what? It does. It does help. That opposite motion of opening up really helps to shift that thinking. And then all of a sudden, just like if you are feeling stuck and you're like struggling with something, and like you begin to hone in so hard focused on a problem that you miss all of the possible solutions that are around it because you're so like zoned in and focused, and you become contracted, that when you start doing exercises and things that open you back up, that all of a sudden even your mind becomes more open and you're able to open up to receiving all of these other possibilities that your mind was previously closed off to because you were contracted and closed in. So this is one of the ways that we can work with posture and working with the body to start shifting and influencing the mind. And that's another way that somatics helps us to soften into what we are experiencing in life. And when we slow down to recognize the things that we are experiencing and allow ourselves to be more fully embodied, we get to actually be living more fully in life. And that is the beautiful part of this. Sometimes we miss out on so much and we don't even realize it because we are so used to living in the patterns that we're living. That when we can come into practices like the room scanning and then the inner scanning, the breath work, experiencing the body work that helps you to connect more into your body and what you're holding on to, experiencing, taking the time to experience your inner self, right, can be so changing because you become more aware. You allow yourself to slow down. You allow yourself to come into the recognition of how things are feeling to you instead of just reacting and responding from the mind. And that can create such a different experience of living life and experiencing your day-to-day activities. So today, while we're experiencing this extra cold weather we've got going on, allowing yourself to feel into the softness of your sweatshirt, the softness of your favorite blanket, the softness of your favorite coat, recognizing these little things, coming into the practice of recognizing the sensations and the feelings of the things that are touching you, right? How often do we get dressed in the morning? We pay no mind to the way our shirt feels on our skin, right? Like those little micro things that we can do, like just slowing down enough to come into that bodily awareness to just notice all of the places your shirt is currently touching your skin. And just by doing something small like that, it begins to shift your level of awareness and helps you to slow down and helps you to recognize what is actually going on in your body. And that is really the important part, is coming into the recognition of what is really going on in your body. Because guess what? When we're in that space of our inner knowing, we then know where our nervous system is at. We then know where we're vibrating at, if we are on this, maybe anxiety end of things, or if we're on this depression end of things, if we're in that fight or flight mode, or if we're in that super rest mode, right? And then we can begin to navigate from there what we need. But if we don't slow down to feel into the sensations of where we're at in our body, we don't really know what we need. And then we're just acting on things that we think might help, and it might be something that increases that fight or flight or increases that depressive energy, right? And so we want to find the balance, and we can only do that when we come to that level of awareness. So this is where the softening that somatics helps create really helps you to be so much more aware of where your nervous system is at in that flow, and how you can better help yourself, right? There's lots of things that you can do for yourself, and that is part of what these video series are going to be geared towards. But there's also just the awareness, coming into that awareness, just allowing yourself to slow down. That can sometimes be enough just to help you build that space of resiliency within your nervous system, so that you're not so easily knocked into one range or another, right? So this is where the practice of just allowing yourself to soften and come into that feeling state, and recognizing that you have the capability of doing this yourself, can help you in facing challenging times and facing those moments of maybe, if you're like me and you have anxiety, when you feel anxiety creeping in, right? I didn't know that, at a certain age, when, going through menopause or perimenopause can increase anxiety. So after my hysterectomy, probably about a year or two after, as when I really started to notice, like, oh, hey, why are all of these things coming back? Like, I thought I was good. Hello, old friend, anxiety attacks. Like, what? Why now? Like, I'm good. I do all of these practices. I do all these things. So understanding the relational aspect of the hormones too for us women is super important. And guys, like, you're not left out of that, because when you start losing that testosterone, it also plays a difference in your mental health as well. So there is aspects as well with age that plays into why sometimes things start to become more difficult for us. And here again, coming back to that softening, it's the self-awareness and the self-love practices that help us to not, turn against ourselves or be in resistance to ourselves. Like, there's some things we just can't help that are going to happen in our lives, right? And it's part of the aging process, or perhaps, like in my case, it was part of a medical process that I had to go through. So it's about recognizing, having the capacity of love and compassion and care for yourself, to then understand, okay, well, how can I hold myself and support myself through these changes? What can I do to help myself now that I'm experiencing it from this space of being, right? So for myself, as someone that has all of these tools and techniques at my disposal from the life I've been living for the last 20 years, it was really quite disturbing for me to be like, oh my gosh, how am I experiencing anxiety when I do, like, how can I possibly be more relaxed? I have all of these things to help me. But it was about coming back inside and really recognizing, where's my nervous system at and why? And so there's been a lot of the unraveling and uncovering as I've been going through the process of learning more and getting more certifications in this and continuing my education. So this has been an amazing journey for me that has been helping me tremendously. And that is why I'm like, this is absolutely where I have been guided to go, what I'm meant to do. Really, I feel like I finally stepped into my path and purpose with this. So I love being able to share this information with you to help you too. So take the time to connect, feel into, what the physical sensations are of the things that you are feeling. And you can begin with something easy like recognizing how your shirt feels on your body today, right? Just slowing down and practicing that, practicing noticing the sensations. You can take it even deeper and perhaps noticing how the air feels around the places of your body that's out in the open. Like, how does the air feel flowing around your hands, right? It's all about the slowing down and coming into that physical awareness of what is going on in your inner world. So I hope this helps you to better understand a little bit about, you know, how it starts to unravel things and how it begins to help you, how it helps to soften you, right? And softening is so needed. It is so needed. It's such an energy that allows you to hold the space. It allows you to really shine forth that energy of love and compassion and be in that space where you recognize that everyone needs some of that love and compassion in their lives. And in the softening, in the vulnerability of it, there's so much healing, there's so much openness, there's so much love, but we can't feel that if we stay armored up and closed off. So again, that it's just one of the